Okay, welcome everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, welcome. Amazing. We can see everyone's lovely faces joining in. We love having everyone's video on if possible. It's great to see you all. Welcome. Lots of people joining in. We are going to get underway very soon, but just in the meantime, if everyone can post in the chat where you are, right, where you are in the world and what you do creatively. Amazing. Welcome to those joining us. Great for you to have video on if possible. Great to be able to see and interact with you all. Just pop in the chat where you are in the world and what you do creatively. Joanna, whereabouts are you right now?
I am in now sunny Los Angeles. It was not so sunny a couple months ago, but it is delightfully sunny right
There we
now.
go. I love it. I'm actually in Portugal right now. So the vast majority of our clients, I spend a lot of time in the US, but I happen to be in Portugal. If anyone's been to the island of Madeira, it is
Ooh,
beautiful. I'm here for a month at the moment, actually, which is fantastic. So I'm getting a bit
nice.
of the European summer vibe. So there we go, which is great.
That's on my bucket list.
It's a beautiful location. Lots and lots of hiking, which is great. So amazing. And those of you that have just joined us, yeah, pop in the chat where you are and what you do creatively. We're starting to see a few people joining in here and signing into the chat. I love that. Different locations. We have some really great plans for today. And honestly, I'm just so excited about doing a webinar with Joanna. We have done a webinar before, but it's been a while, which is lovely to
Yes.
be able to reconnect as well. Hey, all of those popping in. We've got Oklahoma, Mexico, amazing. I love that. Different locations, Berkeley, Ohio. Oh, lots of places. This is awesome. Fantastic. As people keep arriving, feel free to keep adding in where you are and what you do creatively. We're going to get underway. So I'll hand over to you,
Yes.
Joanna, so you can get into it.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Joanna Muoz. I run a studio called Wink and Wonder. I'm based in Los Angeles, California. I started Wink and Wonder in 2013, and I made the full-time freelance jump at the end of 2019, which right before COVID. So now I'm in the full swing of freelance. I like to tell people I draw adorable, uplifting things for a living. I also teach workshops online and in person. I wrote a book on hand lettering, and I just added muralist to my resume. In terms of clients, I've worked with brands like Adobe and Target, Papyrus, and Trader Joe's. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to now tell you about Logan. So I worked with Logan in 2023, at the beginning of 2023, end of 2022. He helps artists bridge the gap between their creative skills and then the business side of things. Often we're really good at one, usually the creative side, have no clue about the other, kind of like me. He's also worked with hundreds of visual creatives to lead their day jobs and multiply their income doing what they love. So when I worked with Logan, he helped me really learn how to organize my business. Even though I had worked a full-time job, I didn't actually know how to run a company. I just took on clients whenever they'd email me, didn't realize there were like 1,000 other things to deal with. And on top of that, he also helped me increase my revenue. I was earning less than 5K when we started, and then it just kept going up and up. And I've earned over 10K with Logan since I started working with him. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to him.
Amazing. Great to be here and lovely to see everyone joining in and everyone's smiley faces today. Look, it's great. Look, we thought, what could we do for this webinar? And we really thought, talking about the highs and the lows of a creative business was a really good topic. So we're going to be diving into that. Just before we do, I'll briefly share a little bit more about myself. There's definitely people here who I am familiar with, some new people here as well, which is great. So as Joanna mentioned, the brand that I work under is Flame Entrepreneur. And my background is that I had my own creative business for 11 years in the live event space. And then eventually that evolved into coaching and helping visual creatives grow their own businesses. For a long time, I've also done a lot of lecturing, mentoring, teaching right up to university master's level as well, with a lot of different programs over the years. So our focus these days really is to help visual creatives to grow. People that we work with are more or less broken into three groups. Group one are like, hey, I'm early stage, I'm trying to get it working. Maybe they've got a day job or they've been maybe a parent and they're really wanting to grow their creative business and bring some income in. So that's group one. Group two are like, hey, I'm already full time. I'm earning some money in the business, but I need it to be more sustainable. Or I need to bring up that revenue. As Joanna was probably in this middle group. And then the third group are basically people that have been doing this a long time already, right? So they're people that maybe you're like, hey, I've been running my own creative business for 10 or sometimes even 20 years, and I want to make it more sustainable. Maybe I want to find some more time and usually increase the revenue as well. So lots of different things we really focus on. The majority of our clients are in the US, and we also do have some clients in Canada and Europe as well. So that's a bit of a blurb. The other really exciting thing, those of you that read through Instagram posts and various things, is that I am going to be giving away 3 freebie calls with myself. These are free coaching calls. So we'll be doing 3 30-minute coaching calls with myself, plus Paul here from the team as well. Paul's on the call too. We'll be giving away a bunch of extra calls with Paul too, which would be great. That is something that we would love to get on as many of these calls as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post in the chat the survey that you can fill in. Right, so this is a survey, and honestly, it's more a way for you to do a bit of a creative business check-in yourself to really understand more about where you're at. And anyone that fills in the survey will basically pick 3 people to get on calls with me, and then a whole bunch more to get on calls with Paul as well. And there is also the section there where there's a question that you can ask, and we will make sure that we get that answered as well. So yeah, it's a really fun way to get connected with us. I think, Joanna, it's the way we originally connected was through something like this as well, and doing a very similar survey. So we'd love everyone here to pop that link open. Those of you watching the recording, because I know we always end up with lots of people on the recording, we'll make sure that it is there in the notes or in the email link as well. We would love to see what you're up to. Okay, so we've got lots and lots to talk about today. So we're really going to dive into this. The first thing we're going to dive into is really talking about the highs and the lows of business, right? So every business has highs and lows. This is a very, very important thing to understand. Some people think, oh no, like once you're on the high, you just keep going and it keeps growing, and you've just got to figure out how to do that. It's like, no, like you're going to get highs and lows in any sort of business, whether it's successful or not. This is something we all need to understand, and creative businesses are no different. Right, there's going to be highs and lows in creative businesses as well. So there's lots of reasons why you can have those highs and lows, and lots of different types of highs and lows. It's not always financial. It could be your energy, your motivation, your creative energy. Right, these things can go up and down as well. Now, there's kind of 2 sides to think about. The first side is the external, right? So it's the things that you don't really have a lot of control over. So things like the seasons, right? It can be the literal seasons, or it could be seasons within the type of business that you're in. Right? It could be about what's happening in the economy. It could be about what's happening locally or even nationally. Even things like COVID, right? COVID was an external factor that affected things and created a different high and low for different people as well. There's also internal things that can happen, right? And actually, internal tends to actually have a bigger impact. What is happening personally? Where is your energy at? Where is your focus? Where are you exhausted? Are you overwhelmed? Are you burnt out? Or what is your belief around what you can do? Where is your mindset at? Right? Are you in a place of scarcity mindset and there's no opportunities out there and everyone's fighting over the work that is out there? Or are you in a place of abundance mindset where you're saying, hey, yeah, there's ups and downs in business, but there is plenty of opportunities for me as well? Right? So there is lots and lots of things that can happen to create these highs and lows. I'm going to be talking about some of them, but we need to really understand there is that external stuff that you don't have a lot of control over. There's the internal stuff as well. Now, I will say the external stuff, you actually can control how you respond to those things, right? So in the end, you do have a lot of control. The first thing we're going to dive into is what we call mapping your creative business year. So this is really about understanding there's going to be highs and lows, and actually you can plan your year around that. So for example, every industry may just have times where there's highs and lows within the industry itself. Right, so there might be times of the year, there might be seasons where there's more opportunities and less opportunities. Right, so for some businesses, there's a lot of opportunities in the holiday season, right? In November, December, around Thanksgiving, around Christmas, there's a lot happening, a lot of opportunities, a lot of money's being spent. So for some businesses, there's a lot of opportunities. Other businesses, there can be less opportunities in that time because people are spending money and energy on other areas. They're busy, they're focused on the holiday season, right? So it's not necessarily that it's just the same for every type of business. Yes, we're talking about visual creative businesses here, and most of our clients tend to be illustrators and graphic designers and muralists. But even within those different areas, you'll see different trends happening as well. So part of it is getting to understand where those trends might sit for you in terms of the types of things you focus on and the type of business you have, and even where you are, right? Where you live. What does that look like? And when I say map out your creative business, yeah, you can actually decide to design when you work and when you don't work. Right? So you might say, hey, when it's a bit of a low time in this type of business, I'm going to take some time off. Right? We've got some clients that might even take a whole month off. Right? They say, great, I'm going to take a month off in this time. Of course, it's not always a fixed time of year. There's lots of variations of this. But some people take off time when there's less happening. Right? So that can be a really smart thing to do. Also, it could be around seasonality for the type of thing you do because of the actual season, right? So muralist, Joanna mentioned, she does do some murals as well. And well, if you want to do outdoor murals, it's not always going to work at different times of the year. Now, different parts of the US even, you're going to see different climates, right? So it's not all good in summer and bad in winter, right? Can actually vary a bit as well. So you've got to start to understand, like, when can I do outdoor murals? And when could I focus on indoor murals? So it's not necessarily about just taking time off. You might say in your business at these times of year, you might focus on murals at this part that are outdoors. And you might say, okay, well, where I am over winter, it's a lot colder and I don't want to be outside freezing my fingertips off trying to do murals. So therefore you might focus more on indoor murals during those stages. Something that is really important for everyone here to be aware of is that you do need to track this stuff, right? So the more time you've been in business, the more you'll be able to track. So you can actually start to see, if you've been in business for 3 years, you can see 3 years of trends, right? You can see where those highs and lows happened for you. Yes, there's industry related stuff as well that creates those highs and lows, but it's also good to understand what happens for you, right? Because there might be some different things in terms of how you're operating, where you're operating, that might even be slightly different to like industry averages, which can all be over the place as well. So that's really, really important, is that you are tracking what's going on and also tracking the reasoning why. Because you might look at last year and say, well, oh, I didn't get any business in July last year. Nothing was happening. So, that's obviously a bad time. Well, maybe you took off 2 weeks in July, or you were really sick for the last half of June, so you didn't do much marketing. Right. So understanding when you're tracking things, even understanding and tracking what was happening to you during those times is important as well. The final thing I'll mention around this is to just be very aware that there is opportunities all year round as well. And sometimes it can be a really good time to focus your business when other people aren't. Right? So you might say, oh, well, no one is working at this time here for this month. Well, that could mean that there's less competition and less availability. So that could be a good time. Right? So it's not all, hey, I have to match my business perfectly to this. And we need to be very aware that our own mindset may cause those downturns as well. We're going to kind of talk more about that internal stuff, because we're more talking about seasonality at the moment. But I do also want you to be aware that there's opportunities throughout the entire year as well. So I know, Joanna, this is definitely something you see a lot of in your business as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences around this.
Yeah, generally speaking, I'm a summer baby, so I enjoy taking time off in the summertime, sometimes a little too much because I live in LA, so it's kind of hard to tell when summer begins and ends. But I definitely love the warmer months. I'm happy to stay home and work when it's cold. On a smaller scale, I've learned over the last couple of years that I actually like working on weekends. I'm the kind of person who I will run errands during the week. I don't know why. And then towards like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, when people are gearing up for the weekend, I like to just kind of chill out at home when everyone else is running amok and work on the weekends. So that's like smaller scale stuff and how my brain tends to work in terms of my creative business. And then last year, a good example is I did a lot of in-person markets towards the end of the year. So leading up into Thanksgiving and Christmas time, my client projects were slow. So I kind of pivoted and started to do in-person markets because I have products that I sell on Etsy, but hadn't really applied to multiple markets. So I wanted to kind of test that out and see if that was more of like a viable source of income for me. So that was really fun to experiment with last year.
Love it. So, so good. And once again, getting that perspective from Joanna, right? Being able to really hear and understand that, yeah, you get to control these things. You get to make these decisions. This is your business, right? So you get to go, hey, I don't like the weather in this way. I do love it here. I like to work this way. I like to work on weekends. That's actually part of having your own business as well, is getting to make these decisions and getting to have that flexibility in terms of when you work and where you work and what that looks like as well. We see that with a lot of clients we work with, is that, big drivers are flexibility and freedom, right? Yes, it's about revenue and wanting to earn what you want to earn. Fantastic. And do the creative work that you love, for sure. But also it tends to be around flexibility and freedom and when you work and what that looks like as well. So love it. What we will do is get everyone here to drop their Instagram link in the chat. We love getting people connected with each other. This is a great way for you to all end up with some more connections. So do drop your URL. Joanna will put her URL as well. So make sure you do put it in as a link, just like Joanna has there already. Go grab it from a browser. And Celeste from our team will drop in the Flammable Entrepreneur one as well. I think some of you might have been messaging with Celeste in the DMs already as well, which is good. Amazing. Thanks, Celeste. And then, yeah, everyone else, pop your Instagram links in there. This is a great way. We'll make sure that we follow you if we're not already. We'd love to get connected too. And yeah, and then go through and follow other people that are here as well. So I see lots of people popping in their links. Amazing. Everyone's getting the URL link. I love it, because then it's clickable and other people can just follow you, click and easy as well. So yeah, no rush in doing that, but keep adding them into the chat. I'm going to jump into the next piece that we're going to talk about, which is really around setting actionable goals. Setting actionable goals is so, so essential. So having clear goals is going to actually help you when you do have those ups and those downs, right? Because if you're having a bit of a down time, you need to keep focused on what you need to do. Otherwise, you're going to give up. You're going to be like, oh, why am I bothering? But if you keep your eye on your goals and say, well, but I want to earn this much, or I want to work with these sorts of clients, or I want to do this sort of work, it's going to help keep you focused even when you're having those ups and downs. So a big part of this is goal setting. Now, most people know about goal setting. Actually, most people also understand how important goal setting is, right? If I said to all of you now, I'd say, well, who thinks goal setting is important? I'm sure everyone's like, yeah, of course. The reality is most people don't actually do anything about it. Most people understand it, they get it, they know about it, but they don't actually take action, right? Or if they do, they don't really set goals in a proper way. They're not setting achievable goals. The goals are too complex, and they're not reviewing them constantly as well. So it is really, really important that you do take time each year to figure out your goals. And I'm talking both personally and professionally. Right? You could have a set of personal goals, you could have a set of business goals, you could combine them. There's lots of different ways to do this, but it's really, really important that you do take some time to actually figure out, what do you want? This is something that we do with all clients when we start working with them, is we help them get really clear on their goals, right? Because we just know that you have to have a North Star. You have to have something that you're focusing on and working on as well. It's really, really important. Something funny that I often think when I even say that, focus on North Star. Well, I'm actually originally from New Zealand. I didn't actually mention that earlier on. Those of you going, where's his accent from? I'm from New Zealand. So we didn't actually have a North Star. So we don't even have a South Star. We have a point in the sky, which is an equivalent. It's called the South Celestial Point. So a bit less exciting. So we don't say, oh, what's your South Celestial Point? So we'll just use North Star as well. So there we go. No, I think most people on the call today are all in the Northern Hemisphere. So we'll stick with that. There we go. So look, as I said, really, really important to set those goals, but then it's about reviewing those goals, right? And reviewing them consistently and constantly. A lot of people, what they do is, yes, they may do a great goal setting session. They come up with some great ideas. Fantastic. That's a great thing. However, what can then happen is they end up putting it in a book, closing it, and then forgetting about it, right? And then the next time they look at their goals is when they go to set their next ones next year. So a really important part of this is making sure that the goals that you set, you can view them, right? So right now you should be able to go, hey, there's my goals. I've got them attached above my device, above my computer. I've got them maybe written down next to my bedside table. Whatever you need to do, make sure your goals are something that you're viewing constantly, because that's also going to help you when you're having those ups and downs. It's going to help you keep focused on what you want as well. Breaking down goals is important too. So yes, you might have your top 5 goals, but what does that look like in terms of action? So obviously great to set the goals, but then how do we make sure we're taking action towards them as well? And that's about breaking them down, working them into a plan too. So Joanna, we'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences around goal setting as well.
Yes, I very much remember this part in the program. Logan would have me set goals, which were achievable, and then we'd check in, and I hadn't done it because I was getting so overwhelmed. So we just kept breaking it down, even the simplest thing. And I actually still do this today. I have like a notepad with stuff written down. I will actually go back to my notepad and write something down that I've already done just so I can go back and cross it off. So even if it wasn't on the list, I feel like I've done something that is either towards a personal goal or a business goal. But it's kind of having that win and the like pat on the back, that motivation to keep you going. And tracking it is huge because some days when I'm not seeing what it is that I'm working towards, I'll feel like I've had a busy day, but then I'll realize I did the laundry, I took care of the cats, I ran errands, and I haven't actually taken steps in my business, which is how you get your business to grow. So
It's so important, and right, like this is just a reminder to everyone here is like I think everyone gets it, everyone understands the importance of goal setting. Like it makes sense, but it's taking that next step, like Joanna's talking about here, and breaking it down and getting it further and reviewing it and go, okay, well, how do I take it to that next step as well? So, goal setting is an important part of it. And it's the first part, and that leads to driving you in the right direction, setting that North Star, setting those paths as well. I love it. Okay, so obviously we're talking a lot here about, what can you do in response to having highs and lows in the business? One of the other things that is really essential is consistency, right? So maintaining the momentum, right? And having consistency in what you're doing within your business. Because it's really, really easy and really reasonable to lose momentum when you're having a tough time, right? It's like a very normal human response. When we're having a rough time, we're not getting results, where maybe we're not getting engagement on Instagram and we're getting declined proposals, or we're trying to send cold emails and no one's replying, right? It's very easy to give up and say, well, why am I bothering? Or I won't do any more this week or this month. Maybe I'll try again in the future, right? It's very easy to do that, and it's a pretty reasonable response, right? However, what I'm saying is, no, you need to keep up that consistency, right? Consistency is very important. Most people are just really impatient, right? I'm pretty impatient too. I sometimes laugh and say, impatience is a virtue too, right? Most people, they expect fast results, right? I do the thing, I send the emails, and I get the results, I get the responses, grow the business. Right, so a lot of people do expect things to happen really fast because we hear on social media about all these stories of overnight successes. The reality is that things take time, and momentum, consistency is a very important part of this. So a lot of people, they'll quit too early. And this is not to quit their business necessarily. It could be, but it could be quitting a strategy or an approach or focusing on their Instagram or a marketing strategy, right? A lot of people just stop doing it too early. They're like, oh, well, it's not working. I tried, right? And actually, these things take focus and these things take time as well, right? So it's not necessarily that you're doing something wrong or that it's not working. Some things just take time. And this is a very, very normal thing in business, is that it's going to take time and it's going to take focus. Yes, like we've had, something we'll get our clients sometimes doing is cold outreach, right? Cold email outreach still works, everyone. It's still a thing that can work. It does not sound very exciting, but it is something that can still work, right? We've had clients that have like sent literally their first 10 cold emails ever, and they've got paid work from that. And we're like, that's not going to normally happen. That's very unusual, but we see it happen. For most people, it takes a lot more than that because they've got to refine their process. They've got to consistently send those emails, and they've got to do it over a long time period, right, to get those results. So this is really about understanding that consistency is going to be part of that. Even when you have those lows and you don't get the engagement on the Instagram post or the proposal said yes or whatever's going on, it's like, okay, what's next? What's the next post? What's the next cold email? What's the next proposal I can send out? So having those ups and downs and those lows is going to be a normal part of business. You can't expect it always just be up and up and up. So consistency is important, and consistency will also get you there. Now, it's all very well to say, you've got to take action, you've got to be consistent, you've got to maintain momentum. The reality is that most people are not very good at being accountable to themselves, right? This is also a very normal thing. So this is where having support, accountability, mentorship, these sorts of things are really important as well, right? Something that we see is from the accountability alone, we just see people taking more action, getting more done, right? Let alone all the other ways we support people, of course. But it's also about that accountability and having someone that's like, have you done the thing? When are you going to do the thing? Okay, let's talk about the thing. What's getting in the way of the thing, right? That there is actually something that really helps people, because it's all very easy to say, I just need to do it. Just need to do it. Right. Well, actually, life's more complicated than that. And we all get stuck in our own heads, and we can have all sorts of things getting in our own way as well. So momentum is incredibly important. And we also need to make sure we've got ways to keep the momentum, things like support or things like strategies and checklists and approaches and a plan as well. So Joanna, this is something I'd love to hear your thoughts around as well: momentum and consistency and accountability.
Yeah, I learned early on that doing outreach is great. So I would do outreach, I would land a client and a job. And because I landed the client and the job, I forgot to continue doing outreach while I was working on the job. So the project would end and then it'd be like, okay, what's next? So I had to shift and keep doing the outreach while I was landing the job and working so that the flow of income was consistent and the jobs were consistent. Another thing that really helped me, there's a video I saw, it's by Mel Robbins, and her spiel was, no one's coming to save you. Your mom's not going to come in and tell you to turn off the TV. I don't know, she might. But for the most part, it is your creative business and no one's coming to save you. You have to be the one to do the work. So whatever that looks like for you is on you. And I learned that the hard way because I had a full-time job for most of Wink and Wonder's like trajectory. And I was relying on, oh, well, clients just randomly email me and I'll say yes. But when I stopped that full-time freelance job, my mindset hadn't shifted. So it didn't occur to me that now I had to do outreach until I joined Logan's program. I'm like, oh, I can tell people I should work with them instead of just waiting around for them to show up, which was not helping my bank account back then. So good thing
It's
I learned.
it's a huge part of it, right? Like it's so easy to be like, great, like I'm good at what I do creatively, I think. Where are the people? Like, are they going to come to me? I've got my website up. I post on Instagram occasionally. It's like what Joanne is sharing here with you all is that it's so important to actually be proactive, right? To go to those clients because they don't know who you are, right? There's a lot of people in this world and they don't know about you. This is the biggest challenge that most people actually have in all types of businesses, but definitely in creative businesses, is that most people don't know you exist, right? And more specifically, the right people. Whereas if you can actually be doing outreach and be going to those people and connecting with those people, well, they're going to know you exist. And that's the first part of it, right? They've got to know, like, and trust you to spend money with you. Well, they've got to know you first. And then you can get the like going and build the trust as well. So important. We're going to talk next about rolling with the changes, right? So things are going to change. Everything's going to change actually, right? And this is whether we're talking about types of offerings that are good to focus on, types of products and services, or approaches in marketing, or the Instagram algorithm, right? Everything is going to change and everything will keep changing, right? So sometimes people say to me, they say, oh, it's not working like it was a year ago, whether they say the algorithm, Instagram algorithm, and this is a classic one. It's changed. Like, yes, it is. And it will change again. And every social media platform is changing and they will keep changing as well. So this is something to be very aware of, is that change is the norm, right? And part of business is going to be experimentation and testing new approaches and being aware that whatever you're doing right now may not work in a year's time. Now, the good thing is things don't tend to move too fast, right? Sometimes people think, oh, everything's changed this week. Well, no, things generally don't happen that fast. So you might be okay with a specific offering or marketing strategy or approach for maybe even a couple of years, but things will change over time, right? So we've seen this even within our own coaching business as well, is that the ways that we connect with people change over time and we have to pivot. We have to try different approaches. So for you, experimentation is going to be part of that, right? When I say experimentation, that could be experimenting with a new area of products or services, right? So diversifying what you do, right? If you are a graphic designer, have you tinkered and played around with other areas of illustration that you could get involved in? Have you ever thought of getting into murals, right? Have you considered getting into product packaging? So part of it is making sure that you are evolving in what you do as well. Now, you've got to be careful with this because we also see people do it too much, right? They're like, I've heard on the internet you've got to diversify. So they're trying to do like 20 different things and they're completely overwhelmed, right? We end up working with some people like this that are like, how? I'm really overwhelmed, right? So part of it here is also making sure you keep your eye on the ball around what we call your bread and butter. Your bread and butter is like the core thing that's probably going to be making money in your business, right? So we've got to be very aware of that. Whatever's working right now, those of you that are already in business, we need to be careful not to see a new shiny object and drop this thing over here and go jump over there, right? How could you spend 10% of your energy, 20% of your energy testing something, trying a new area out, experimenting, whilst you still focus 80% of your energy on what is currently working? Right, so this is just something to be very, very aware of is, yes, diversification is important. Change is going to be normal. You do need to keep experimenting, whether that's with different types of offerings or different marketing strategies. However, you need to also make sure that you don't just run away from what is working already and with that shiny object syndrome. It's very normal, right? Oh, this is exciting. This is the new big thing. I'm going to throw everything at it. And then you're going, oh, this thing that I invested a lot of time in already, it's not working anymore. Well, it's because you've shifted your focus. So just being very aware of both sides of the coin of, yes, important to test, experiment, try different things, but also making sure you're focusing on your core as well. Joanna, we'd love to hear your thoughts around this one as well.
Yeah, definitely try new things, have a baseline expectation, but also be open to things surprising you. I did in-person markets, which was really fun to, maybe not as fun to prep for the market, really fun to talk to people and make new connections. So that was the positive I drew out of that experience. And then I didn't offer it this year so far. So maybe I'll pick that back up, but right now it's not really exciting for me. Earlier this year, I did online workshops because right now I teach in person. So I wanted to see what that was like. And that was enjoyable. And then I did my first mural, which I loved, and I'm totally going to jump into that. So it's just kind of seeing like what lights you up and what is it, one, did you enjoy it? Two, is it worth your time? Three, what are the financial, benefits of it? One surprising thing that I did was test out TikTok Shop just for fun. I just picked the product and was like, what does this even mean and how do I do it? So I just did it as an experiment. And one of the videos took off. It earned like over 3 million views and it generated $12,000 and more. And it's still earning money off of one video. So I went into it with like an open mind and then had a surprising outcome. And it was, just trying to see what lights me up and knowing that there are different avenues that we can explore. It's not just commissions and it's not just licensing. Right now, people are really caught up with like the licensing thing, which is great, but there's lots of places to make money. So you just have to be open to it.
I love that. And, I love Joanna's mentioned she's leaning more into murals, right? Those of you that have thought about murals or are doing murals, this is a growing area of opportunity. So it's also about sometimes going like, what are areas of opportunities? What are areas of offerings where there's growing opportunities, right? There's more and more demand. Yeah, there's lots of people doing it, of course. There's lots of people doing everything, but of course there's lots of opportunity as well. So I love that. We're going to talk about something really interesting, and this is something that we run a whole coaching session on this often because it's really, really important. It's called recency bias, right? Raise your hand, those of you on video, if you've heard of recency bias before. So it's a really interesting thing that is very human, very normal, and it happens to basically all of us. Recency bias is basically where whatever has happened to you recently will feel like it's been happening to you for a long time. So for example, if this week you sent a proposal and it got declined, you're going to feel like everyone is saying no and declining to you, right? Because that's your most recent experience, right? Or let's say today you sent some cold emails and someone replied to you saying, Who do you think you are? Stop emailing me. Take you off your list. By the way, that barely ever happens. Right? It's pretty rare, but it may happen. And you'll think, cold emailing doesn't work. It never works. Everyone's really abusive. Everyone's really mean. It's a terrible strategy, and I get hardly any replies. Right? You're basing your reality off what's happened recently, and it's a very normal thing. Right? This is what us humans do. Is we look at the most recent information, and that's how we feel like the whole month. Right? So technically we're the 1st of July today, but whatever happened in the last few days of June is probably how you're currently relating to June right now. If you had an amazing final week of June or even final few days, whether personally or professionally, you're probably like, June was like the best month ever. Right? If you had a terrible few days and like some bad stuff happened personally or professionally, you're going to be like, June was the worst month. So it's a very normal thing to feel. However, the reality is it doesn't always accurately represent what is actually happening, what the actual reality is. And this is why tracking is so essential. Tracking does not sound very fun in business, but it is essential. Tracking what is happening. Right? So if you're doing cold email outreach, what are the actual numbers? Right? If you sent 50 emails in the last month, what were the actual number of replies? And how many of them were positive replies? And how many of them showed interest? What are those actual numbers? Not what happened in the last few days. Same with proposals. Right? If you sent out a bunch of proposals or you've been talking to potential clients, okay, what are the numbers behind that? Right? Because you may find actually things are going okay. Or you might be like, no, I need to lean in even more. You thought they were going okay because you're like, oh, everything's great. You're like, wait, why is my bank account not filling up? Well, yes, you had one proposal came through and said yes at the end of the month, but actually the rest of the month wasn't working so well. So understanding this is part of tracking, right? And tracking what's happening within different parts of the business, whether that is revenue or outreach or different things like that. Also, we've already talked about this, but consistency, right? Keeping consistent no matter what. Right? Because recency bias itself can cause those downturns. Because you're like, oh, it's going terribly, right? The business is not working at the moment. So what happens is you're like, I might as well not do any marketing because I guess June, July just doesn't seem to be a good time to run a business these months. So what do? You send less emails. Maybe you post on Instagram less. Maybe you reply to potential clients a little bit slower because you're like, they're going to say no. It can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And that's sometimes what can happen, these highs and lows. Sometimes you are creating those lows, right? And you can feel like it's seasonal. It can feel like it's the economy, right? It could feel like that's what it is because you're trying to attribute a reason. You're like, why is it not working? Why is summer better than winter or winter better than summer? Oh, it's because it's cold and everyone's grumpy and, whatever that is. Well, yes, but also it could be because of you, because of maybe the fact that you didn't do so much marketing. You're affected by things like recency bias, right? So we've just got to start to understand, once again, external, yes, but there's also those internal things that are happening too. And those internal things are things like recency bias. I mean, I love sharing about this because we all do it. We all notice ourselves falling into this sort of bias, right? Recency bias is a very normal, very human thing, and it can affect you a lot when it comes to running your business as well. Right. So it's very easy. We often see this with our clients is, sometimes we'll have clients say, oh, the economy is just a mess right now. The industry is a mess. And that's why my business isn't working. But they also just had a declined proposal like 3 days before that. So they're just feeling down and they're feeling negative. And then the next week, they're like, they got a yes. And they're like, everything's amazing. The industry's back on track. Everything's good. And the season's great. It's like we're so impacted by what's happening internally as well. And we often attribute to those external things as well. Joanna would love to hear your sort of thoughts and experiences around this as well.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that. I've had months where I thought I didn't make any money, and then I earned like close to 10K that month. And I just didn't realize it because checks would come in at different times, or I thought it was last month. So for me, tracking projects that are incoming, projects that could potentially be incoming, and then invoices that I sent out, all of that is super, super important. If there's one thing that I have stuck to from Logan's program, it's definitely like tracking and projecting and just keeping statistics, because that's really what help me wrap my head around this whole business side of things. I just want to draw all day, but someone's got to take care of the numbers, and that's also got to be me. So, but it is helpful because you can see where you need to make adjustments, and that's huge.
I love it. So, so powerful. So, look, we're going to be jumping into some question time next. We've got a good amount of time for questions. So, if anyone here has a question, please just pop the question in the chat. We were sent in some beforehand already, so we're going to dive straight into them. But we'll keep an eye on that chat and we'll answer what we can in the next 20 minutes or so. And just before we dive into questions, just a reminder that we do also have that survey. We'd love to get on some coaching calls with myself and also Paul from the team. So I will drop that link in again. Once again, it's going to be in the email we send out, in the notes there as well, those of you watching the recording. So do check that out. We'd love to connect with more of you. There's a couple of people here. I can see that we've already had some calls with, which is super lovely as well. So look, we're going to talk about this question first that we got sent in around the biggest struggle, right? The biggest struggle that people that we see people having in their creative business. What's the biggest thing that gets in their way? And I kind of love answering this sort of question because it's really about understanding the two sides of running a creative business, right? One of them is the creative side and the other one's the business side. What we see from talking to so many people and working with a ton more is that a lot of creative people are very good at what they do creatively, right? So they're good at their craft, but they're not so good at the business stuff, right? The marketing, the finance, the organization, even things like the goal setting or the sales. Right? This is a very typical thing that we see again and again, is that people who are creative are often really great at the craft, struggle with the business side. Right. So this is actually the reason why I do so much of what I do. It's bridging the gap between these two areas. But the biggest struggle is exactly that. And sometimes that struggle, what it does when you have the struggle around the business stuff, it actually makes you question the creative stuff. So we've seen this a lot where people are like, maybe I'm no good at what I do creatively, right? So maybe my craft needs work. I need to develop my portfolio more. I need to go and do another creative class. Right now, these things are great things to do, right? I'm not saying that doesn't matter. You're going to keep upskilling creatively. But what we see the vast majority of the time is that it's not the creative side, it's the business stuff. But they often think, it must be the creative stuff because they understand that. Right? Because that's your area. There's your area of expertise. You can always see what you can do better. So this is the thing that we often see is that people kind of neglect the business stuff, whereas that's the thing that's often in their way. So it's really, really good to understand this thing. And, obviously that question is a good one. It's like, what is that biggest challenge? It's balancing that and actually leaning in and understanding that the reality is if you want to run a creative business, you do need to do the business side. Just like what Joanna said, it's like she would love to just draw all day. But Joanna knows that if she just drew all day, unfortunately, she would have a beautiful hobby, I'm sure, but wouldn't be running a creative business. I mean, there's nothing wrong with drawing all day if you can and having a beautiful hobby. But actually, like Joanna here, if you want to run and grow a creative business, you've got to understand these both sides of it. And there's going to be areas like the business stuff that you're going to have to lean into. You're going to have to be a beginner at. You're going to probably have to get some support, some accountability as well. So it's really, really important to really understand that. The next question, this is a really specific question, but I love it because it's actually asking around a pricing question. So we got sent in a question which says, what is the starting rate if someone asked me to design them a shirt? Now, I will say I'm going to make some assumptions which could be wrong about this, but I'm going to say it's to design, as in design a design for a shirt, right? So we could be saying, well, an actual clothing designer, but I'm going to say, no, we're talking about, putting a design on a t-shirt. Right, so that's what we're going to be really talking about. Now, what is the starting rate? Well, unfortunately, I'm not going to give a blanket answer here. I'm going to give a few ideas and a bit of a range, but basically it depends on so many factors. So the biggest thing, and this is actually turned into a bit of a pricing workshop, is that what you charge comes down to what people are willing to pay. Right, this is a very important thing in business, is that it comes down to what are people willing to pay you. Right, so that price for that design on that t-shirt, it could be $200, it could be $2,000, it could even be more or less. Right, we've got to understand what are they willing to pay. Now, how do we figure that out? Well, sometimes we've got to guess, but often we can actually do some more work around that by asking and understanding and researching who is this person? What is it an organization? right? Because understanding who they are and doing some research, there's going to be a difference between designing a cool design for the local hockey team, who is also happens to be coached by a friend, and like a corporate store that is going to be selling these t-shirts, right? These are very different things, but you're still designing. You're still designing for a t-shirt, so it could vary a lot. So this is where you're doing that research, understanding who the client is, what they potentially might pay, what it is worth to them, and you can ask them questions. It's also about digging in a bit further as well. How are they going to be using these t-shirts? Right? Are they selling them? How many are they going to sell? How long are they going to sell them for? What are they planning to, what's the price point they're willing to sell them for? Right? So there's lots of different things here that can come into pricing. And this is just to give you an idea of some of them. Something I always recommend to our clients as well is like, yeah, absolutely. Start with figuring out what they're willing to pay. But we also have to get really clear on understanding what is the cost that you've put in. Right? So how much time have you put into this? How is there material cost as well? I'm not saying start there. I'm saying that you have to do that math as well. Because we've literally seen people who are like, oh great, I'm making $1,000 off this thing that I'm selling. And then we're like, great, like let's break it down. How many hours was it? What the material? Was there any material cost on that? Is there any delivery or anything like that for the product? And sometimes they end up doing the equation going, oh my goodness, I'm getting paid like $10 an hour. Because they haven't done those equations. So it's also important to understand what is the time and energy you're putting into it too, because you want it to be very profitable, right? You want that hourly rate to be really high. So, really, really important one there. And that's what it comes down to when it comes to pricing. Now, remember, there's lots of ways to price something. It could be like a fixed design rate. It could also be royalty. Right? So for someone that's selling t-shirts, selling design with your design, you could potentially be doing royalty. And there could even be a fixed rate plus royalties, right? There's lots of different ways to do that as well. Joanna, do you want to have a tackle of this one here? So what have you found that surprised you, that has impacted your business the most?
This is going to sound very silly. Even though I had started Winking Wonder in 2013, I had coffee with two other students of Logan's in the program, and they were talking about doing outreach. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, oh, when you reach out to clients and you tell them that you want to work with them. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, wait, how do you get jobs? And I was like, they just show up in my inbox, because that's how I was trained for so long. And they're like, okay, but what happens when you want to work with someone? I'm like, I don't know. I just wait until like I maybe want to work with them. And so that one tiny little coffee that I had where they were discussing outreach, and I don't know if I had hit that part of the program yet at that time, but that was a complete game changer, because to me, they were successful and they had this steady stream of income, and I couldn't figure it out until they had mentioned that tiny, tiny little thing. Whereas I knew I was good at what I do, still am. I wanted people to see that and to pick me, rather than me stepping forward and saying, hey, I think this would be a great partnership. We should work together. I was still of the mindset of, well, if a client wants to work with me, they'll put two and two together. They'll show up in my inbox. So that for me alone was like a huge, very silly, but a like significant game changer for me. Don't wait to be invited. Go out and actually go after what it is you want. And it's worked for me every time that I actually do it, because I don't do it consistently and I'm working on that. But every time I actually do it, most of the time clients say yes, because I have the body of work. They just either haven't heard from me, or they don't think that I'm interested, or they've never like put two and two together, which is where, creating mock-ups of, hey, this is a product and this is how my art would look on it, and we should work together. So that's huge, huge game changer. And no one taught me that until
I
I joined the
love it.
program.
It's such an important part of it, is like understanding that these sorts of pieces of the puzzle, things like outreach, are really, really essential, but they're not always obvious, right? Like I see this often with some of the things that we're teaching and working with our clients on. It's like some of them are really not obvious things, and sometimes even just hearing about it like can be the trigger, like it was for Joanna, and then it's going, okay, well, how do I actually implement this? What does that look like? What should I be saying? Right, so there's a lot of different things within this as well. Cool. So if other people have questions, do pop them in the chat. We've got a few more that we'll jump into that we've sent in. I really like this one because it's basically a question around how do you get started, right? How do you start? What is the first thing you do to start a creative business, right? And I really like this one because we work with a lot of people who are early stage as well as people that are further along. But this is something that does come up for people, is like, where do I start? What is the thing that I start doing first? Do I create an email newsletter? Do I build a website? Do I start doing cold emailing? Do I build a portfolio? Do I do mock-ups? Right now, one of the things that we've really seen over the years is that it almost doesn't matter as long as you start with something, right? Because you actually will need probably all of these things. But if you start somewhere, rather than go, oh, should I do that? Should I do that? And trying to spend several months figuring out what to do, you're much better spending that time doing something, right? So my encouragement around this question is start with something. Go, hey, okay, well, I'm going to start trying to market what I do. I'm going to start posting on Instagram. Building momentum up is going to be more around starting to take action, right? So where do you start? Well, you start taking action on your business. And at the start, that's probably going to be some random stuff, right? It'll probably be a mixture of things that you can do. But this is part of the understanding, is that it's not you have to do it this perfect way, right? We've worked with people who started by just posting on Instagram. That's how they started, and they got some opportunities through that, and kind of just evolved in something with business. We've worked with people who the first thing that they did was they went and registered their business as an LLC. You do not have to have your business as an LLC, by the way, but it's an option. Some people, that's what they do first. And they're like, yeah, I now have a business and I'm running a business. And all they've done is they've done some paperwork. Well, that could be the start. Other people start doing cold outreach or start doing mock-ups. Or some people strongly believe that the first thing you have to do is build a website, right? Well, we've worked with clients who have brought income in and they haven't got a website yet. And they've obviously built one. It's an important part of it, but it's not necessarily that you have to have it first. Right. So, yeah, and Amy's just here that, this is a scary question, afraid to ask. Often people are afraid to ask these sorts of questions because they're like, we don't want to seem silly. Like, there must be an obvious thing, right? What is it? Well, actually, it's not obvious. And lots of people do things in different ways. My encouragement is take action on something when you're at the early stage. Yes, as you get a bit further along, this is where it becomes a bit more about what is the roadmap, what is the focus. Ultimately, you don't really actually have a business until you've actually got clients, right? So arguably, the quicker you can get clients, the better. And we've had people that we've worked with that actually got clients before they had anything else, right? They knew someone that wanted to pay them to design something, and they didn't have anything else in place, right? That's where they started, right? So it's going to be different for everyone as well. I love that. So Kareem shared a question here around tips around writing a successful cold emailing to potential clients. How do I pitch myself, my art to others without seeming pushy? So Kareem, part of this here is going to be experimentation in terms of trying some different strategies. And yes, you can get lots of different templates and learn strategies online. And there are some good principles of what to do and what not to do. But part of it's going to be actually trying, experimenting, and testing and seeing what reply rates you're going to get. So my recommendation generally is create a bit of a template and send that, but do not send the same template to every single person because you will end up in spam inbox, right? You should have a personalized component to that email. Hey, so-and-so, I found you through this, or I've admired your work through this website. So there's something around what is the connection? How did you find their information? And then they're sharing more about what you do, right? Bit of a breakdown, bit of an outline, but you don't need to send too much, right? You don't need to send a big 2-page brief. All you're actually really trying to do with that first email is get them to reply saying, hey, I'll be interested in what further. Sometimes we have clients that test really short emails. Like, I do this. Would you be interested in some more information? Sometimes that actually works, right? So it's very easy to overthink these things, but part of it's going to come down to testing. Getting to that target market is really ideal, right? So who do you send emails to? Well, you've got to figure out who are your ideal clients. So often there's a few steps there as well. And go, okay, great. I now know that my ideal clients are cafe owners in this region. Okay, well, great. Now you need to get some emails, and now you need to create an email template for cafes. And it might depend on what you're doing. A bit of customization about the cafe, and then sharing a bit more about yourself. seeing if you can get some replies, and then maybe testing something else out. So this is like that was a 1-minute tutorial on cold outreach, which is something that obviously is a lot more complicated than this, but these are some key things to really think about as well. But your main aim when you're sending that first email is to get a reply. Is to actually get a reply and continue that conversation. They don't need everything about you. You just need to see if there's some interest there in a conversation as well. I love that. Look, we are going to be wrapping up very, very soon. I do have one more question we're going to dive into that we were sent through beforehand. So this is around marketing. So when it comes to marketing, what is the best way to market a creative business? I think this is a great question because I think everyone wants to know, what is that like special secret, right? Cold emailing. We talked a lot about that too. Is that it? Or is it something else? Is it social media? Well, lots of different people will focus on different areas. Within visual creative businesses, so illustrators, graphic designers, muralists, we work in lots of areas of visual creative. We tend to see, yes, cold emailing is a good one. Instagram, still working, important thing that you can do. Building partnerships can be another area. Networking, right? So networking can also be, hey, connecting with people, but then it's also about maintaining relationships with previous clients. If you have previous clients you've worked with, maintain those relationships, because ideally you want to have repeat clientele happen and you want to get referrals, right? So that's like a really brief crash course of the things that we typically see. They're not the only things that we see people marketing their business, but they tend to be the biggest things. And each of them is a whole wealth of information, right? There's a lot of different ways and approaches and strategies around even Instagram, or how to build partnerships, or cold emailing, or even networking as well. But ultimately, part of that is figuring out what works for you. So we have some clients that really lean into Instagram. We have others that really lean into cold email. There's not necessarily like the perfect way for every single person. Some people really hate some forms of marketing and they're like, well, I never want to do that. It's like, that's fine. What is the thing they can do? Or maybe we need to have some breakthroughs and figure out what's going on. Why do they hate it so much? And what could that look like if they were to lean into that? So just a wee mini little marketing tutorial near the end here as well. We're going to wrap things up, but would love everyone who is here live to pop into the chat a takeaway from today. What's a takeaway that you've experienced from today's training? Maybe it's something you've learned, something you found helpful or useful, interesting, surprising, from something that I've shared or Joanna's shared as well. Would love to hear in the chat if everyone can pop one takeaway in the chat, what has been useful. This will really help to consolidate some of your ideas and learnings, and also to help summarize some of the different things that we've focused on today. Obviously, we've delved pretty deep into this whole topic of the highs and the lows, and we talked about that, those external factors and really understanding what can affect your business, but also understanding that that internal stuff is a big part of it as well. You have a lot of control over what you can do, whether that's setting goals, maintaining that consistency, or whether it's even being aware that recency bias is a very, very normal thing as well. Right, so some good things being shared here in the chat. No one way to get started, just start, Amy. Absolutely, I love that. That's a really good one. Going out and getting what you want, not waiting around, right? Absolutely, that's a great one. Taking action on your goals, tracking your goals, habit stacking. Yes, absolutely, celebrating small wins. You can't just set goals and move on. You have to check in with them. Absolutely, Lauren, like that's a good one as well. So honestly, lots of other things being shared here. So keep firing things in the chat. We're going to wrap things up here. Lovely to run this today, and we hope to connect with some of you through the survey as well. Joanna, it's been great, hasn't it? It's been a blast to reconnect and run this
today. I actually miss doing this. It's fun to share my experience and what I've learned, because I joined the program because I had no idea what I was doing, and I didn't know who to follow. I didn't want to watch a ton of Skillshare classes, and I wanted the accountability in the community. And I said yes to doing another webinar with Logan because I genuinely do believe in this program. And I'm still a full-time freelance, so something's working.
I love that. Such a delight to do this with you again today, Joanna. So take care, everyone. This has been awesome. Have a lovely rest of your days, and we'll all catch up soon. Awesome. Take care, everyone. See ya.
Bye, everyone.